My name is Doreen, and at 35 years old, I never expected to be a widow. When Jack died suddenly last month, my world shattered. But nothing prepared me for what happened after his funeral. I returned home to find my sister-in-law, Patricia, and her husband already moved in their suitcases unpacked in my bedroom. Patricia looked me dead in the eyes and said, "This house is mine now. I have already sold your belongings, so get out." I could not help but laugh, because she had no idea what was coming. Before I continue my story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of survivors. Trust me, you will want to see how this story unfolds. Jack and I met 12 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. I was 23, then working as a volunteer at the art auction while finishing my teaching degree. He was 28, already making a name for himself as a financial advisor with an uncanny ability to predict market trends. I remember the moment perfectly. I was arranging a display of watercolor landscapes when I accidentally knocked over an expensive vase. As I frantically tried to catch it, a hand reached out and grabbed it mid-air. That hand belonged to Jack. "Nice save," I said, feeling my cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I have quick reflexes," he replied, with a smile that made my heart skip. "Financial markets wait for no one." That night, we talked for hours about everything from Renaissance art to his family business to my dreams of teaching art to elementary school children. Jack was different from anyone I had ever met. He came from wealth, but wore it lightly. His intelligence was matched only by his kindness. Our romance was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, we were married in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. His mother Eleanor was there beaming with joy and welcoming me warmly into the family. Noticeably absent was his sister Patricia, who claimed a business emergency had kept her away. I would later learn this was the first of many slights. Jack and I built a beautiful life together. He continued climbing the ranks at his investment firm, while I secured a position teaching art at Westbrook Elementary. We rented a small apartment at first, saving diligently for our dream home. Jack never wanted to rely on his family money, preferring to make his own way. 5 years into our marriage, we found it. A gorgeous colonial-style house in a leafy suburb with a big yard and plenty of space. The house needed work, but we saw its potential immediately. Weekends were spent painting walls, refinishing hardwood floors, and planting a garden. Every nail hammered and seed planted was an investment in our future together. The only shadow on our happiness was our struggle with infertility. After 3 years of trying naturally, we consulted specialists who ran countless tests. The diagnosis was devastating. I had severe endometriosis that made pregnancy unlikely. We discussed adoption and surrogacy, but decided to take some time to process before making any decisions. "Family is more than biology," Jack would say, holding me close on the nights I cried. "We have each other, and that is enough. The rest will fall into place." Throughout these challenges, my relationship with Jack only deepened. He never made me feel like less of a woman because I could not bear children. Instead, we channeled our nurturing instincts elsewhere. I poured extra love into my students, while Jack mentored young financial analysts. His family dynamics were complicated. The Harrington family had built their wealth over generations through real estate, and later diversified into various investments. Jack's father, Thomas, had been a stern, demanding man who expected his children to earn their place in the family business. Jack had worked diligently to prove himself, while Patricia had taken a different approach, relying on charm and manipulation to secure her position. Eleanor, Jack's mother, became like a second mother to me. After Thomas died 6 years ago, she moved to a smaller home, but remained active in community work and family matters. She often told me how happy she was that Jack had found me, saying, "I brought out the best in her son." Patricia always resented how easily things came to. Jack Eleanor confided once over tea. He inherited his father's head for business, but my compassion. Patricia is all ambition, with none of the ethics. Patricia married Robert about 8 years ago. He came from old money, but had little of his own, having frittered away most of his inheritance on failed ventures. The four of us rarely socialized together. When we did, Patricia would make subtle digs about our modest lifestyle or my career as just a teacher. The last 2 years of our marriage, Jack spent increasing hours in his home office. He explained he was working on a special project that required discretion. I respected his privacy, though sometimes I would bring him coffee and catch glimpses of spreadsheets and documents. He seemed troubled at times, but would quickly smile and change the subject when I asked what was wrong. "Just some family business matters," he would say. "Nothing for you to worry about." 3 months before his death, Jack updated his life insurance and asked me to meet with his attorney Daniel to review our wills. I thought it was just responsible financial planning. I had no idea he was preparing for a storm that was brewing just beyond the horizon. The day Jack died began like any other Tuesday. He kissed me goodbye at 7:30 in the morning, promised to pick up Thai food for dinner, and headed to his downtown office. I went to school teaching my third graders how to create papier-mâché sculptures. Just after lunch during my planning period, my phone rang. It was Sylvia, Jack's assistant. Doreen, her voice trembled. "Jack collapsed during a meeting. The paramedics are taking him to Northwestern Memorial. It looks serious. You need to come now." The world tilted on its axis. I remember dropping my coffee mug's ceramic shards scattering across the floor like my suddenly fractured life. My principal drove me to the hospital after seeing the color drain from my face. The 20-minute ride felt like hours. As we navigated Chicago traffic, my hands shaking so badly, I could barely text Eleanor. When I arrived at the emergency room, I knew immediately from the doctor's expression. Jack had suffered a massive heart attack. Despite their best efforts, he was gone. At 40 years old, my husband had simply ceased to exist. There was likely an undiagnosed congenital heart condition, the doctor explained gently. Sometimes these things show no symptoms until it is too late. I collapsed into a chair, unable to process the words. Jack had mentioned chest pain occasionally over the past year, but we both dismissed it as stress or indigestion. He was young, fit, careful with his diet. Heart attacks happen to older men, not vibrant 40-year-olds, with their whole lives ahead of them. Eleanor arrived 30 minutes later, her face ashen with grief. We held each other, two women united in loving the same man. She had already lost a husband and now her son. The injustice of it seemed too great to bear. Patricia and Robert appeared an hour after that. While Eleanor and I were still sobbing in each other's arms, Patricia immediately asked to see Jack's personal effects. Her eyes were dry, her demeanor businesslike. "I need his keys and phone," she announced to the nurse. "As his sister, I have responsibilities to the family." I was too distraught to argue as she collected Jack's belongings, including his expensive watch and wallet. She made a show of comforting Eleanor, but barely acknowledged me, except to ask if I had contacted Jack's attorney yet. "Daniel called me already," I said numbly. "He mentioned urgent matters, but I cannot think about that right now." Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. "What matters did he specify?" "No," I replied, "and I cannot talk about this now. My husband just died." The next 3 days passed in a blur of grief and surreal administrative tasks. Death certificates, funeral arrangements, obituary wording. I moved through it all like a ghost, sleeping in fits, and starts eating only when Eleanor insisted. My best friend Vanessa came to stay with me, handling calls and visitors when I could not face them. Patricia suddenly appointed herself funeral director, overriding my wishes at every turn. The simple, intimate service I wanted became an elaborate affair with business associates I barely knew. She insisted on an open casket despite my objections, selected flowers Jack would have hated, and even changed the music selections. "The Harrington family has traditions," she said dismissively when I protested. "Jack would want things done properly." Daniel called twice more, his tone increasingly urgent, but I deferred the conversation until after the funeral. I could not bear to discuss wills and assets while my husband's body was not yet buried. The funeral itself was a blur of black clothes and pitying glances. I stood at the graveside, my legs threatening to buckle as they lowered Jack's casket into the ground. Eleanor held my hand on one side, Vanessa on the other. Patricia stood across from us, her expression unreadable as she tossed a white rose onto the casket. Later at the reception at Eleanor's house, I overheard Patricia talking to Robert. "Once the will is read, things will be put right," she said. "The house should revert to family ownership now that Jack has no heirs." I walked away, unable to process what she meant. All I wanted was to return home, to curl up in the bed Jack and I had shared, to smell his pillow while I still could. After the funeral reception, I was emotionally and physically exhausted. Vanessa offered to stay another night, but I insisted I needed some time alone in my home to process everything. She reluctantly agreed, making me promise to call if I needed anything. I drove home in a daze, pulling into our driveway just as the sun was setting. The first sign something was wrong was the unfamiliar luxury SUV parked in my spot. Then I noticed the living room lights were on, though I had definitely turned everything off that morning. With growing unease, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The furniture had been rearranged. Jack's favorite leather armchair was gone, replaced by an ornate antique I recognized from Patricia's house. Family photos had been removed from the mantel, and the air smelled of unfamiliar perfume. "Finally decided to show up, did you?" Patricia's voice came from the kitchen doorway. She stood there, holding a glass of wine. My wine from the collection Jack and I had built together. "What are you doing in my house?" I asked, too shocked to be angry yet. "Correction. The Harrington family house," she said smoothly. "Robert and I have moved in." As if on cue, Robert appeared from upstairs, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Doreen, we thought you might appreciate some time away from here. Too many memories." "You thought wrong," I said, finding my voice. "This is my home. Please leave." Patricia laughed, a cold sound without humor. "I am afraid that is not happening. This property belongs to the Harrington Family Trust now that Jack is gone without children. Surely he explained this to you." "That is ridiculous," I said. "We bought this house together. My name is on the deed." "A technicality," Patricia waved dismissively. "Dad always intended the family properties to remain with blood Harringtons. Jack knew this." I walked further into the house, noticing more changes. My artwork was missing from the walls. The antique sideboard Jack had refurbished for our anniversary was gone. "Where are my things?" I demanded. "I have already sold some of the less significant pieces," Patricia said casually. "The rest are in storage until you arrange to collect them." I kept the list here somewhere. She rifled through a drawer that had once held our takeout menus. "You sold my possessions." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "The less valuable ones, yes. The art pieces and antiques belong to the family anyway." She handed me a hastily scribbled list. "You can take your personal items and clothing." My hands trembled as I looked at the list. My grandmother's china marked as donated. Wedding gifts labeled sold. Family photos described as discarded. This is illegal, I said. You cannot just move in and sell my things. Patricia's expression hardened. Look at this. She pulled out a yellowed document from her handbag. This is Dad's original will from 20 years ago. It clearly states that all family properties return to the trust if a Harrington dies without issue. I glanced at the document. It was indeed Thomas Harrington's will, but it had obviously been superseded by newer documents after his death 6 years ago. This is meaningless, I said. Your father's estate was settled years ago. This house was purchased after his death with our money. Money Jack earned working for the family business, Patricia countered. Money that was rightfully part of his inheritance. Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should discuss this with the lawyers present. There is nothing to discuss, Patricia snapped. Doreen was just leaving. Weren't you, Doreen? I stood my ground. This is insane. I am not going anywhere. Patricia's face transformed into something ugly. Let me make this absolutely clear. You failed at the one thing Jack needed from you. You could not give him children. You have no claim to the Harrington legacy. This house and everything in it belongs to the family now. Her cruelty took my breath away. 5 years of pain about our infertility struggles thrown in my face on the day I buried my husband. How dare you, I whispered. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Jack confided in me how disappointed he was. Why do you think he spent so much time at the office? He was avoiding coming home to you. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You are lying. Am I? Then why did he never change the old family will? He knew what would happen when he died. She stepped closer. You have until tomorrow to pack a suitcase. Anything you leave behind will be considered abandoned property. Robert at least had the decency to look ashamed. We can store your things temporarily, Doreen, until you find somewhere else. This is my house, I shouted, finally losing my composure. You cannot just take it. Patricia signaled to someone I hadn't noticed. A man in a security uniform stepped from the shadows of the dining room. This is Frank. He will escort you out if necessary. I have already filed a legal claim with the family attorney. Until it is resolved, we have as much right to be here as you do. Outmatched and overwhelmed, I retreated to the master bedroom to collect some essentials, only to find Patricia and Robert had already claimed it. My clothes were stuffed in garbage bags in the guest room. My jewelry box had been emptied except for the few costume pieces I owned. Even Jack's wedding ring, which the hospital had returned to me, was missing from my purse. As I hastily packed a suitcase, my phone rang. It was Eleanor sobbing. Doreen Patricia has banned me from visiting Jack's grave. She says, as executor, she controls all access to family plots. She changed the cemetery gate code. My own son and I cannot even bring him flowers. Eleanor, listen to me, I said, trying to stay calm for her sake. Patricia has lost her mind. She and Robert have moved into my house and claim it belongs to them now. They have sold or stored most of my possessions. Oh my God, Eleanor gasped. I was afraid of this. Jack warned me she might try something, but this is beyond what even he imagined. Jack knew, I asked, confused. Not now, dear. Not on the phone. Where will you go? To Vanessa's, I guess. Just temporarily until I figure this out. Good. Stay safe. I will call Daniel first thing tomorrow. As I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, Patricia watched with satisfaction. One more thing, she said. I will need your house keys. I stared at her in disbelief. You are stealing my home, and you expect me to hand over my keys? It is not stealing when it is rightfully ours, she replied coldly. The keys, please. I dropped them on the floor at her feet, and walked out of my own front door, not knowing if I would ever return. Vanessa was horrified when I arrived at her apartment with one suitcase and a story that sounded too bizarre to be true. She poured me a strong drink and called her brother, who happened to be a police officer. Unfortunately, this is a civil matter, he explained after hearing my story. Since her name is on documents, even outdated ones, and she is a family member, the police cannot simply remove her. You will need an emergency court order. I spent a restless night on Vanessa's sofa bed, alternating between tears and fury. First thing in the morning, I called Daniel Woods, Jack's attorney. His response was immediate. I have been trying to reach you, he said urgently. Jack left specific instructions in case anything happened to him. Can you come to my office right away? An hour later, I sat across from Daniel in his downtown office. He was in his 60s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation for meticulous attention to detail. Jack had trusted him implicitly. First, let me express my deepest condolences, Daniel began. Jack was not just a client, but a friend. Thank you, I said automatically. Patricia has taken over my house. She claims it belongs to the family trust now that Jack is gone. Daniel frowned. That is completely false. Jack was very clear about his wishes. He updated his will just last month. My head snapped up. Last month, why? I think it is better if Jack explains himself, Daniel said cryptically. He unlocked a drawer and removed a sealed envelope with my name written in Jack's familiar handwriting. He asked me to give you this if anything happened to him. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and began to read. My dearest Doreen, if you are reading this, the worst has happened. I am so sorry to leave you alone to face what comes next. I hoped to resolve this situation while I was alive, but if I couldn't, I needed to ensure you were protected. For the past year, I have been investigating financial irregularities in the family business. What I discovered shocked me. Patricia has been systematically embezzling from the company for at least 10 years, possibly longer. Millions of dollars diverted through shell companies' falsified invoices, manipulated accounts. When I confronted her 3 months ago, she threatened to destroy you if I exposed her. I've been gathering evidence to present to the board and law enforcement, but I needed to make sure you were safe first. In my office behind the painting of Lake Michigan, there is a wall safe. The combination is our anniversary date. Inside, you'll find a USB drive with all the evidence I've collected, including recordings of Patricia's threats. I've updated my will to ensure everything I own passes directly to you. The house is yours alone. I've also set up a trust fund that Patricia cannot access under any circumstances. Trust, Daniel. Trust my mother. Do not trust Robert. He knows what Patricia has been doing, and has benefited from it, though I believe he's more weak than malicious. I love you more than I can express. You were the best thing in my life. Always yours, Jack. I stared at the letter, unable to speak. Daniel waited patiently as I processed this bombshell. He knew I finally whispered. He knew he might die. Jack had concerns about his health, Daniel admitted. He mentioned chest pains, dizzy spells. He wanted everything in order just in case. And Patricia, did he tell you what she did? Daniel nodded gravely. Not in detail, but enough that I understood the severity. The updated will is very specific. Everything Jack owned passes directly to you with provisions for Eleanor's care. There is no family trust claim on your house whatsoever. Patricia has no legal ground to stand on. But she is already there with security guards. She has sold my possessions. That is theft and breaking, and entering, Daniel said firmly. We will file for an emergency injunction today. But first, we need to secure that USB drive. It is your best leverage. Vanessa drove me to my house during Patricia's known lunch hour. We parked down the street and approached cautiously. As Jack had feared, the locks had been changed. Fortunately, in our renovation enthusiasm, we had installed a hidden key in a false rock by the garden shed. The house was empty when we entered through the back door. I moved quickly to Jack's office, finding it largely untouched. Patricia had probably been too busy selling my belongings to investigate this room yet. The painting of Lake Michigan still hung on the wall. Behind it, just as Jack described, was a small wall safe. My hands shook as I entered our anniversary date. The safe swung open, revealing several items: the USB drive, an envelope of cash, our passports, and a small box containing Jack's grandfather's pocket watch that I thought Patricia had taken from the hospital. We were about to leave when I noticed Jack's laptop was still in his desk drawer. I grabbed it too, knowing it might contain additional information. Back at Vanessa's apartment, I plugged in the USB drive. It contained hundreds of files meticulously organized. Financial records showing money transfers to offshore accounts in Patricia's name. Emails where she authorized fraudulent transactions. Photos of documents with forged signatures. Most damning of all, an audio recording of Patricia threatening Jack when he confronted her. "If you tell anyone about this, I will make sure Doreen loses everything," her voice snarled from the computer speakers. "The house, her reputation, her job. I have friends everywhere, Jack. Cross me, and you will both regret it." I also discovered emails between Jack and the family company's board members, laying out his concerns in careful, measured language. He had been building a case, gathering allies, preparing to expose Patricia at the upcoming annual board meeting. But his heart gave out before he could finish what he started. That afternoon, Eleanor called. "Doreen, I found something you should see. Old family photos and letters. They provide context for what has been happening. Can you come over?" At Eleanor's house, she showed me a collection of family memorabilia spanning decades. Photos of Jack and Patricia as children showed a pattern. In every picture, Patricia was trying to take whatever Jack had: his toys, his awards, his place at their father's side. "Thomas favored Jack," Eleanor explained sadly. "Not because he loved Patricia less, but because Jack had a natural talent for business. Patricia resented it deeply. When Thomas died and left Jack in charge of significant portions of the company, something in Patricia broke. She felt cheated." "That doesn't justify stealing millions," I said. "Of course not," Eleanor agreed. "Nothing justifies what she has done, especially not to you after losing Jack." Among the letters was correspondence between Jack and his father from years ago, discussing the future of the company. Thomas explicitly stated that family homes purchased with personal funds were never part of the business assets. Patricia's claim about the house was completely fabricated. Armed with this knowledge and Jack's evidence, I returned to Daniel's office. He had already filed for an emergency hearing and was preparing to request a criminal investigation. "This goes beyond a family dispute," he said grimly. "This is serious criminal fraud. The company board needs to see this evidence immediately." The next morning, I received a certified letter from Patricia's attorney claiming that as Jack's next of kin, she was challenging the validity of any will leaving assets to me. She alleged I had exerted undue influence over Jack during a period of diminished capacity. "This is absurd," I told Daniel over the phone. "Jack was of completely sound mind until the moment he died." "It is a delay tactic," Daniel explained. "She is trying to maintain control of the assets while the case drags through court. Meanwhile, she can continue liquidating what she can get her hands on." That same day, I discovered Patricia had changed the locks on our safe deposit box and emptied it of valuable jewelry that had belonged to my mother. When I confronted the bank manager, he apologetically showed me paperwork with what appeared to be my signature authorizing Patricia as a co-signatory. The signature was clearly forged. My phone began ringing, with calls from friends and distant relatives, all asking strange questions. Had Jack and I been having marital problems? Was it true I had refused to have children? Had I known about Jack's other relationships? Patricia was spreading vicious rumors attempting to paint me as a gold digger who had trapped Jack in an unhappy marriage. The situation grew worse when I tried to return to work. The principal called me into her office with a troubled expression. "Doreen, we have received some concerning calls about your stability," she said carefully. "A woman identifying herself as your sister-in-law expressed worry that you might not be emotionally equipped to be around children right now. She is trying to destroy my life," I said, fighting back tears. "None of what she is saying is true." "I believe you," my principal assured me, "but district policy requires I place you on paid leave until this is resolved. I am so sorry." Without my home, many of my possessions, and now temporarily without my job, I felt Patricia tightening a noose around my life. That evening, I received threatening messages from her lawyer, warning that if I pursued claims against her, she would reveal information that would damage my professional reputation permanently. The next day, Vanessa and I drove past my house to find Patricia had hired private security guards who stopped us at the end of the driveway. The gardens Jack and I had lovingly planted were being torn up for what looked like a pool installation. "You cannot even come onto the property without permission from Mrs. Harrington," the guard informed us. "I am Mrs. Harrington," I said through gritted teeth. "Not according to my employer," he replied stonily. Later that week, Eleanor called me in a panic. Patricia was here with her lawyer. She demanded I sign papers giving her authority over Thomas's remaining assets. When I refused, she threatened to contest my competency and have me placed in assisted living. I rushed to Eleanor's home to find her shaken but resolute. "I will not give in to her bullying," she declared. "Thomas would be appalled at what she has become." While I was there, Robert called asking to meet privately. Against Eleanor's advice, I agreed to see him at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. "I cannot stay long," he said nervously, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting Patricia to appear. "You need to know that Patricia has gone too far. I never agreed to throwing you out of your own home. Yet you are still living there," I pointed out coldly. He had the grace to look ashamed. "I am trying to mitigate the damage. She wanted to throw away all your personal mementos. I have been secretly storing things I know must be important to you." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because she is forging documents," he whispered. "Not just signatures on bank forms. She is creating backdated company records, fake board minutes, even a fraudulent codicil to Jack's old will. She has someone inside the records office helping her." "You need to go to the police," I urged. Robert paled. "You don't understand. She has things on me too. Financial improprieties I was involved in. She will make sure I go down with her." "Then help me anonymously," I suggested. "Tell me where to look, what to watch for." He slid a folded paper across the table. "These are the dates and document numbers of records she has altered. The name of her contact at the records office. Account numbers for the offshore transfers." He stood to leave. "I was never here. You never saw me." The next day brought another blow. Eleanor was hospitalized with chest pains after a confrontation with Patricia at the family mausoleum. Patricia had changed the locks there too, barring Eleanor from visiting her husband's and son's resting places. "The doctor says it was stress-induced angina," Vanessa reported after visiting Eleanor. "She will recover, but she needs to avoid further confrontations." By now, word of the dispute had spread through the extended family. People began taking sides. Those who benefited from Patricia's position in the company supported her. Others who had witnessed her manipulation over the years rallied behind me and Eleanor. Sunday dinner at Cousin George's house devolved into a shouting match when Patricia's allegations were challenged by Jack's childhood friend Simon, who knew the truth of our marriage. Through it all, Daniel worked tirelessly on the legal case, filing motions to freeze assets, submitting evidence of Patricia's forgeries, and pushing for criminal charges. But the wheels of justice turned slowly while Patricia's destruction of my life accelerated. The final straw came when Patricia somehow gained access to my email account and sent resignation letters to my school and to the children's art therapy program where I volunteered. By the time I discovered and disputed these messages, the damage to my professional relationships was significant. "We need to end this," I told Daniel during an emergency meeting. "I cannot keep playing defense while she dismantles everything I care about." "The hearing is scheduled for next week," he assured me. Meanwhile, I have been in contact with the company board members Jack had reached out to. They have quietly authorized a forensic audit based on the evidence you provided. "Next week might be too late for Eleanor," I said. "The stress is literally killing her." Daniel's expression softened. "There is one other option. Jack left a sealed letter to be opened only under specific circumstances. I think those circumstances have arrived." The morning of the emergency court hearing arrived with a sense of foreboding. I had barely slept going over my testimony with Daniel until past midnight. Eleanor had been released from the hospital but was too weak to attend. She gave me her wedding ring to wear for strength. "Thomas gave me this 50 years ago," she said, pressing it into my palm. "It has survived worse crises than Patricia." The courtroom was tense as Patricia and Robert arrived with their attorney, a shark-like man named Victor Lawson, known for aggressive tactics. Patricia looked confident in an expensive suit, greeting family members in the gallery as if arriving for a victory celebration. When the judge entered, Daniel requested a brief delay. "Your Honor, we have just received critical evidence that bears directly on this case. Representatives from Harrington Investments are en route and have requested the opportunity to address the court." Patricia's smug expression faltered slightly. The judge granted a 30-minute recess, during which Patricia huddled intensely with her attorney, casting suspicious glances my way. When court resumed, 3 stern-faced men in business suits had joined us. I recognized them as senior board members of the family company. The oldest, Walter Davidson, had been Thomas Harrington's closest friend and advisor. "Your Honor," Daniel began before addressing the specific claims regarding the Harrington residence, "we believe it is essential to establish context for Mrs. Patricia Miller's actions and credibility." Patricia shifted uncomfortably as Daniel approached with Jack's USB drive and laptop. "Evidence has come to light that Mrs. Miller has been systematically embezzling from Harrington Investments for over a decade. The late Jackson Harrington discovered this criminal activity and was preparing to present his findings to the board and law enforcement when he tragically passed away." Victor Lawson jumped to his feet. "Objection. These unsubstantiated allegations are completely irrelevant to the matter of property ownership before the court." "On the contrary," Daniel countered smoothly, "they establish a pattern of fraudulent activity and directly relate to Mrs. Miller's current claims on my client's home." The judge allowed Daniel to continue. For the next hour, he methodically presented Jack's evidence. Financial records showing millions diverted to accounts Patricia controlled. Emails where she gave instructions for falsifying invoices. The recording of her threatening Jack and me. Patricia's face transformed from confidence to rage to fear as the evidence mounted. When the audio of her threats played, several family members gasped. Robert stared at the floor, unwilling to meet anyone's eyes. Furthermore, Daniel continued, we have evidence that Mrs. Miller has engaged in breaking and entering, theft of personal property, forgery of multiple documents, and filing false reports with financial institutions. She has sold property belonging to my client, barred family members from visiting grave sites, and engaged in slander and defamation to damage Mrs. Doreen Harrington's personal and professional reputation. Victor Lawson tried repeatedly to object, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge's expression grew increasingly grave. Walter Davidson approached the bench. Your Honor, on behalf of Harrington Investments, I can confirm that our preliminary internal audit has corroborated these allegations. We have already frozen all company accounts Mrs. Miller had access to and are cooperating with federal authorities on a full investigation. Patricia finally broke. This is a conspiracy, she shouted, rising from her seat. Jack was trying to push me out. He always got everything. The company, father's approval, mother's love, that house should have been mine. Mrs. Miller, control yourself, the judge warned. The house was purchased with funds my client and her husband earned, Daniel stated calmly. It was never company property or part of any family trust. I have here the original deed and mortgage documents showing it was acquired years after Thomas Harrington's death with no connection to family assets. The judge examined the documents carefully. These appear to be in order. Mrs. Miller, do you have documentation supporting your claim to this property? Patricia's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him away. My father always intended family properties to stay with blood Harringtons. She cannot have children. She has no right to our legacy. A murmur ran through the courtroom at this cruel statement. The judge's expression hardened. Mrs. Miller, not only do I see no valid legal claim to the property in question, but your actions appear to constitute several serious crimes. I am granting the emergency injunction ordering you to vacate the property immediately and return all removed items. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting you from contacting Mrs. Harrington or entering the property under any circumstances. Patricia's face contorted with rage. This is not over, she hissed at me. Actually, it is, came a voice from the back of the courtroom. 2 police officers entered, accompanied by a woman in a dark suit who displayed an FBI badge. Patricia Miller, the FBI agent, announced you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes across state lines. You have the right to remain silent. As Patricia was being handcuffed, her attorney tried to intervene. The FBI agent simply handed him a warrant. We have a search warrant for her residence and office. Additional charges may be forthcoming. Patricia's final glare at me, as she was led away, held a lifetime of bitterness and rage. Robert remained, seated, his head in his hands. As the courtroom cleared, Walter Davidson approached me. Doreen, Jack spoke highly of you. He was building a case against Patricia for months. The board resisted investigating his claims, initially not wanting to believe a Harrington could betray the family this way. When he died, we feared the evidence died with him. He made sure it didn't, I said softly, clutching Jack's letter in my pocket. The company owes you a debt of gratitude, Walter continued. If there's anything we can do, just make sure Eleanor is taken care of, I replied. She's suffered enough. Outside the courthouse, Robert approached hesitantly. Doreen, I want you to know I had no idea how far Patricia would go. The things she said about you and Jack were lies. Your marriage was what ours should have been. You stood by while she threw me out of my own home, I reminded him. I know. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I've already moved my things out of your house. He handed me a key. The security guards have been dismissed. I saved what I could of your personal items. I took the key without thanks. Whatever sympathy I might have felt for Robert was overshadowed by his cowardice when it mattered most. As Vanessa drove me home, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and exhaustion. The house came into view, and for the first time since Jack's death, I felt a small sense of peace. This was our home, and I was finally returning to it. The weeks following Patricia's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and damage control. She faced multiple federal charges for the embezzlement scheme, with additional state charges for the break-in theft and forgery. Despite her attorney's efforts to secure bail, the judge deemed her a flight risk due to the overseas accounts and her demonstrated disregard for the law. Robert filed for divorce and cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for leniency. His testimony revealed the extent of Patricia's crimes stretched back further than even Jack had discovered. While Robert would face consequences for his role, his cooperation significantly reduced his potential sentence. Reclaiming my home was both healing and heartbreaking. Many of my possessions were gone forever, sold to unwitting buyers across the country. The gardens had been partially destroyed, and Patricia had painted several rooms in garish colors out of spite. But the structure itself, the home Jack and I had lovingly created, remained intact. Eleanor moved into the guest house on my property after her doctor advised against her living alone. Her presence was a comfort to us both. Together we sorted through Jack's belongings, sharing stories and tears, as we decided what to keep, donate, or store. Jack always said you were his anchor, Eleanor told me one evening as we sorted through photo albums. When Thomas died, Jack struggled with the responsibility suddenly thrust upon him. Then he would come home to you and remember what truly mattered. The financial aftermath was complicated, but ultimately resolved in my favor. Jack's life insurance policy provided substantial security. The company board, eager to make amends for not taking Jack's concerns seriously enough, ensured I received the full value of Jack's company shares and pension. With Daniel's help, I established the Jack Harrington Foundation, dedicated to providing legal assistance to widows facing property disputes and financial fraud. The foundation quickly gained support from Jack's former colleagues and clients who respected his integrity. My journey of healing was neither quick nor linear. Some days, the weight of grief and betrayal felt unbearable. I joined a support group for young widows, finding solace in sharing experiences with others who truly understood. Therapy helped me process the trauma of not only losing Jack, but facing Patricia's cruelty immediately after. 3 months after the court hearing, I was ready to return to teaching. My principal welcomed me back warmly, and my students' enthusiasm for art provided a welcome distraction from lingering legal matters. Creating beauty, alongside children who saw the world with such open hearts, proved profoundly therapeutic. Jack's office remained untouched for 6 months. I could not bring myself to enter the space where he had worked so diligently to protect our future. When I finally did, with Eleanor's gentle encouragement, I discovered notes for projects he had hoped to pursue. Home improvements, travel destinations, ideas for my birthday present. "He never stopped planning your future together," Eleanor said, wiping away tears as we reviewed his notes. Gradually, I transformed his office into a studio where I could pursue my own art again. The first piece I completed was a watercolor of Lake Michigan, similar to the one that had hung over his safe. I placed it in the same spot, a reminder of both what was lost and what remained. The criminal trial of Patricia Harrington Miller became a minor sensation in financial circles. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including Jack's meticulous documentation. Patricia's defense strategy of blaming Jack backfired spectacularly when board members testified about his reputation for integrity. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. The judge ordered restitution of the stolen funds, ensuring Patricia would emerge from prison with nothing. The family name suffered in the short term, but the board's swift action to address the fraud and implement new safeguards helped restore confidence. Eleanor and I attended the sentencing together, not out of vindictiveness, but to close that chapter definitively. Patricia refused to look at us, staring straight ahead as the judge delivered the sentence. As she was led away, I felt no joy, only relief that her ability to harm others was finally curtailed. A year after Jack's death, I stood at his grave with fresh flowers. The pain had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something I could carry without being crushed by its weight. "I kept our home," I told him quietly. "I kept my promise to look after Eleanor. I am finding my way forward, one day at a time." That evening, as Eleanor and I shared dinner on the patio Jack had built, she handed me a journal I had never seen before. "Jack gave this to me for safekeeping months before he died," she explained. "He asked me to give it to you when the time felt right. I think now is that time." The journal contained Jack's private thoughts about our marriage, his hopes for our future, and reflections on what truly mattered in life. The final entry, dated just days before his death, read, "If love is measured by how it transforms us, then what Doreen and I share is immeasurable. She has made me better in ways I never imagined possible. Whatever comes next, that love remains my greatest achievement and legacy." Those words became my touchstone in the years that followed. I eventually renovated the house, not to erase Jack's presence, but to honor our shared vision while creating space for my evolving life. Eleanor remained my closest family, the mother I had lost young and found again through Jack. The foundation grew, helping dozens of women navigate situations similar to what I had faced. Each success story felt like transforming pain into purpose, exactly as Jack would have wanted. 5 years after losing Jack, I stood in my classroom, watching students create art that expressed their own stories. My journey from devastation to rebuilding had taught me that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can choose how we respond. The house Patricia had tried to steal had become not just a home again, but a sanctuary for healing and new beginnings. As Eleanor often reminded me, quoting Thomas, "True wealth isn't what you own, but what you build that outlasts you." Jack had built not just a home or a career, but a legacy of love and integrity that continued to shape lives long after he was gone, including mine. If you have ever faced betrayal from someone you thought you could trust, I would love to hear your story in the comments. How did you find the strength to rebuild? Sometimes sharing our experiences helps others know they are not alone. Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to hear that even after devastating loss, it is possible to reclaim your life and find purpose again. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your story is not over when tragedy strikes. It is simply turning to a new chapter.